Welcome to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. Stevie, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good, thanks, boys. I'm good. Yourselves?
Great, thanks for asking. John?
I am tip top, here to speak about the West Highland Way, one of my favourite subject matters.
That's for sure. And we've got a appropriately placed guest to help us through our rather lengthy question set that we furnished you with Stevie beforehand. So yeah, we've got a lot to get through, but before we get into the nitty gritty of it, we always like to find out a wee bit more about you, your journey in running, and how you'd kind of just want to account for that journey. So passing the mic over to you, Stevie, for a wee bit of a self intro.
Well, who am I? I am a 47-year-old from Motherwell who didn't really run when I was younger. It wasn't my thing. And I guess my kind of journey went from an injury where I had to do physical therapy to rebuild strength after that. And then over the last decade, it's just become something that is much, much bigger. Almost takes over my entire life now, but in a good way.
And then, so tell us more about that moment, that injury that seems to have propelled you into the direction of running and ultra running.
Well, when I was younger, I still do snowboard. But back in the early 2010s, I blew my ACL when I was snowboarding. Completely ruptured it. There was nothing left. And at the time, I had to get my ACL reconstructed so I could get back snowboarding. It's something I do as a hobby. Off the back of that, I would also take a lot of freelance photos, and I ended up getting a nice wee gig with the ski resorts up north in Visit Scotland, where I would go off every winter, take PR photos for them, and basically just get to bum about the mountains at the weekend. So I had to get my ACL reconstructed in 2012. And the goal for me at the time was just to get back on my snowboard, just to get as fit as possible, get that knee strengthened back up, and get back out there into the mountains. So for the first 12 weeks, it was just kind of doing stretching, getting some mobility back into the knee. And then after 12 weeks, the physio said, right, what we want you to do is start running and just do it nice and gentle. It was all controlled. It was nothing harsh, nothing hard, just running, 10 yards, see how it feels, running 20 yards, see how it feels, and just building that up over time. And they basically gave me a target of trying to run a mile by the end of my physio. But me being me, I went out and I was like, right, okay, well, I'm fit. How can I push myself here? And by the time I went back to see them the following week, they were like, how are you getting on? I said, right, I've ran that mile, so what do I do now? And it just kind of went from there where it was like, okay, well, if I can do a mile, then next time I go out, can I do 2 miles? Can I do 3 miles? And in my head, I was like, right, I want to kind of run 10K. Can I do 10K? And I'd managed to do that by the end of the week. And I was like, right, okay, well, I need a bigger goal here because I'm enjoying this. This is pushing myself. It's ultimately getting my length or my knee built back up and getting the strength back in it. But I wanted that kind of a bigger goal to aim for. And I guess at the time, I kind of stupidly thought, well, why not a marathon? Why not give myself a long-term goal, not just get back on my snowboard and get through the winter season, but give me something to aim for the following summer. And I entered the Edinburgh Marathon, and that was my kind of first kind of venture into running.
What? Right, I've got a couple of questions, but you've answered a couple of them already, actually, when I was thinking about it. Do you still snowboard?
I do, but I'm going to say not as much as I used to. Before I had kids, I would be away most weekends. I would finish work at 5 o'clock on a Friday, jump in the car. I would have various friends in Fort William and Aviemore, drive up there, stay for the weekends, make a weekend out of it, and then come back down the road and go to work on the Monday. Obviously, it's a little bit harder now with kids because you've got to be about at the weekends. I don't want to
life changes a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, absolutely, in the nicest possible way. Life changes. But then also with the way that the sort of events I've done over the last few years, your training for that is done during the winter, or during kind of winter from like January onwards. So it's trying to balance that time. And then on top of that, we've just had a couple of absolutely guff seasons where there's just not been the snow there. There was a lot of snow this season, and ironically, I got myself injured at the start of January. Nothing to do with my legs, thank God. I could still run, but I managed to crack some ribs. And that at that point, it was like, I need to prioritise things here, and the priority is going to be running over trying to get back up into the mountains.
So hobbies have changed a wee bit. Okay, so also ACL reconstruction. I've heard these words before. I know what an ACL is. I know what happens when it goes. What's involved in the reconstruction though, Stevie?
There's two things they can do. They can do a patella reconstruction where they take apart the front of the knee and kind of bring it down and over, or they can take a graft from the hamstring. And I got a graft on my patella. So they basically just chop your knee open, like literally peel it back. I've still got the scars there if you look close enough. And they peel that open and take a graft of the patella ligament, put it in place, screw it in, and that then forms your new ACL. I'm sure there'll be somebody from a medical background listening to that saying that's not exactly how it happens, but
I bet that makes sense.
It's along those lines. So it's it's not a small operation to go through. I was looking at the best part. Well, it was definitely 12 weeks before I was mobile enough to start running.
Okay.
But that weakness was kind of always there in the back of my mind for the first kind of like 6-7 months. Previous now, I don't, not that I don't think about it. I can still feel it. See when it gets, it's weird. I'm just an old man now, but I can feel it when it gets cold during winter. You're like, oh, that's a bit stiff. But aside from that, I just forget that it's never happens.
But it's been successful.
It has.
That reconstruction has been successful. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, it happened at the local hospital in East Kilbride, which was where I lived at the time, and my mum was actually the orthopaedic sister that was in charge of the theatre where the operations took place. So on the day that I got operated on, she couldn't be involved in it. She had to be away because it was a family member. She's now long retired, but she still keeps in touch with the consultant that actually operated on my knee. And when she tells him the stories of what I'm doing now, he's just, he can't believe that I've gone from that to being able to do this.
What a story to tell future patients. Sorry, Stephen.
I know. Well, I was just going to say, if it wasn't for that unfortunate injury, that accident or whatever you want to call it, then Whiteley wouldn't have been sitting here speaking to us tonight and having done everything that you've done. So, it's just one of those sort of sliding doors moments or whatever.
That's exactly what it is. There is no way, like, when I was younger, my brother, he was the runner in the family. That was the thing that he done. And when he was at school, he was bloody good at it. Like, he went on to represent Scottish schools at kind of 3,000 metres and cross country and things like that. And I was always just the one that got my head down at school and got on with things and left him to it. Whereas now it's complete chalk and cheese. It's like, my brother wouldn't mind me saying he couldn't run a 5K just now. And it's
That's
just,
what a brother like that.
It's the complete opposite now.
You also might not have had the Instagram handle 100 kilograms to 100 kilometers. So that's always intrigued me. Give us a backstory behind that handle.
So that was something I only set up, 2023, I think it was. So I've got a personal Instagram account that used to be loads of photos of snowboarding and just what I was up to in my life. And then in 2023, towards the tail end of then, I'd always been a solo runner. I'd always just went out, ran myself, turned up at events, got my medal, went off, and that was me. Yeah, I kind of knew a couple of faces that you could nod to and say hello to, but you didn't really know who the person was. And then like I said, at the end of 2023, I decided I was going to try and become a bit more social. I started to listen to some podcasts, yourselves, Press Play Run. Alison and Ryan had the one going in Glasgow, and they had a Sunday run for people that were training for marathons, but just anybody could come along to it. And I thought, I'm going to come in and start doing that, but I don't want to bore my family and friends with loads of running stuff. I wanted to set up an account more just to keep myself accountable, more just to document what I was doing for myself. But I didn't want to bore everybody from my kind of normal life, if you want to call it that. I didn't want to bore them with me posting a run every second or third day.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, put it in a wee compartment.
Yeah,
Right.
and
Yep, I get that.
at the time I was over 100 kilograms, and my goal at that point was to potentially run 100 kilometers.
Right,
And that was, back then that was a massive figure for me. I was like, that's what I'm going to focus on. So that's where the handle came from.
two massive figures.
Let's go. You mentioned the Edinburgh Marathon. Describe to us your first Edinburgh Marathon, or the Edinburgh Marathon.
At, at the time, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. Like, I had trained for it, and everybody had told me about the wall you were going to hit, and some folk had told me about the course. It was kind of flat and boring, but I just went into it with the kind of approach of I'm just going to keep going and see what happens. And on the day, again, I didn't really have a lot of running friends at that point, but people had told me like 4 hours, if you can get below 4 hours, that's like amazing for somebody doing a marathon. And I went out on my first day and I got 3:49:56 was the time I finished in. So at that point in my head, it was like box ticked, never have to do one of them again. I'm never going to beat that. That's it. I've completed marathons. Don't need to do it.
Yeah. So when did the word ultra marathon come on your radar?
But that would have been a few years later. If that was in 2013, I think for the next maybe 3 years, I just kind of, I say bummed about, but I would go and do the Glasgow Half Marathon because why would you not go and want to run over the Kingston Bridge? Or I would go and do a 10K here, or maybe if my work their offices are based down south, so they always put a team in for the Bath Half Marathon. So again, I'd make a weekend of going down and doing that. But ultras never really came onto the scene until 2017, and it was Run the Blades up the back of East Kilbride in Eaglesham out on the wind farm. My family home when I was growing up was right on the outskirts of East Kilbride. It's no longer on the outskirts because they built more houses round about it, but from my bedroom window you could see all the windmills. And I don't know what it was, but it was just that concept of, all I need to do is run an extra 4.8 miles and then suddenly I can call myself an ultra runner. And that's another box ticked off. And yeah, I thought, why not? Why not give it a shot? And I went in 2017 and done my first ultra there.
I was just checking. That was a year after us, Stephen.
Was it?
Yeah. We did it.
It was round about there.
I was just checking there to see, because very often we'll find ourselves on the same course as people that we speak to.
Yeah.
But
coming back to what I said about when I was a solo runner, I look back at photos of Glen Ogle when I went to do that. And that would have been what, October, November 2023. So that again, I was still a kind of solo runner at that point. I knew some faces to say hello to, but I can look back at my photos where I'm just taking photos of me on my own at the start line, or just taking like general views of the start line and all the crowd. And now I look through that and I can pick out so many people that I now consider friends who were standing, 5 foot away from me, but I had no idea who they were at the time.
Brilliant, man. I love it. And it's great how the community grows. And you mentioned the pressure and play, and I know they have a brilliant community going in Glasgow. And there's lots of these community runs have popped up. And even in the last couple of years, you can see things. I was on last Saturday there. Stevie and I were at Lee Campbell's Pentlands run, his latest social one. We had Lee on a podcast earlier in the year. The number of people that's turning up at these events, brand new people, it's phenomenal. There must have been, I don't know, it was like 30 plus people there on Saturday.
I think it was close to 40, if not over 40. And like you say, it was a lot of new faces that they'd heard about it, or friends had said, well, I'm going to this, why don't you come along? It's brilliant watching that grow.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question then?
Yeah.
Because that flip from sort of solo runner, and you said to it sounded like that, right? Wait a minute, I need to be a wee bit more social. And certainly, do you know, You're a well-kent face now compared to you were in 2023.
Yep.
Yeah. Was that like that conscious decision that you made there to say, right, wait a minute, is that to get more out of the sport, to get that connections with other people? What was the motivation?
I think it was, again, it was just, I was listening to podcasts as I was
Right.
running and realising that there was that community in Scotland. And especially with Press Play and Run, the fact that it was only 10, 12 miles away from me,
Aye,
and these
local.
people were coming together. But then as I'm listening to it, and I keep, I'm good friends with Alison and Ryan now, and I'll go for runs with Alison quite often. And I always talk about, there was a podcast, there was an episode they were doing when they were talking about the Supernova 5K run on the Forth Road Bridge. And my daughter's called Nova. So straight away I seen that race and I'm like, all right, okay, well that's maybe a sign for me to go and do it. And then I looked at the price of it and it was something like £45 for a 5K run. And I was just thinking, these guys are taking the piss. But it was £45 that you had to pay up front and then they would let you know whether you got in on the ballot or not. It was like Great North Run style where they were taking all your money and you're like, it's a bloody 5K. And then I'm listening to the episode and I'm hearing Alison and Ryan saying the exact same thing. And I was like, wait a minute, these are my people. These people are thinking the same thing as me. I need to go along and start getting involved in things like that.
Oh,
So
thank you.
That's where it came from.
Yep.
Brilliant. You've not been to Running Boys just the once, though. You've
No.
been there a few times, eh?
Yeah, so God, I'm looking over. I've probably got about 12, 14 medals up on the wall from it. And that's across like their night 110K that they would do in, it's normally October time. And then I've done every variation of the 10K, the 50K, the 21K. A couple of years ago, myself and one of the other ambassadors for the event, we done all three of them in one weekend. So we done the 10K on the Friday night, turned back up for the 50K on the Saturday, and then done the 21K on the Sunday. And that's actually a thing that has become a lot more popular now. A lot of people are doing that.
Yeah. They've got something like that up at Ochterarder. They do this double dare thing.
Yeah.
So, but
I keep needing to get up to that one, but it keeps selling out.
I got a fast finger for that, eh, man. Now, this is one of the questions that we sent to you, Stevie, but it's an observation, certainly of mine, that you're not scared of a high mileage week. And what you've spoke about there, doing all these events in the one weekend, how does your body, not just the ACL reconstruction, how does your body cope with the high mileage?
It copes okay. This year I deliberately went for higher volume for the West Highland Way. I learned a lot of things last year, and I felt that when I got to Glencoe last year, my tank was empty. My feet were in bits, which slowed me down, but I felt like my tank was empty. So this year it was a conscious decision to up that weekly volume and just see how I coped. And I was smart about the approach I took to it. I wasn't just going straight in with stupid numbers. I was always having almost like a 3 week block, and then a recovery week or a deload week, and then another 3 week block that would just kick on slightly from the previous block. So it was building up over time. But yeah, there was by the time I hit my peak weeks, I was comfortably over 100 miles each week, and my body, it reacted okay to it. And it sounds crazy because 100 plus miles is 100 plus miles. There's no way to sugarcoat that. But when you're building it up, if my base run was 8 miles in the kind of the smaller blocks, then that would become 9 miles and 10 miles and 11 miles and 12 miles. And before you knew it, I was just accepting that I was getting up and going for a 12-mile run that morning, and it was fine.
There'll be people interested, very interested, in how you get to that kind of mileage comfortably. And that brings me to, do you work with a running coach?
I don't. I mean, running, everybody says running's cheap. It's not. It's an expensive sport. And for me, it's already expensive enough without being able to justify going and spending that money on a coach. But again, we've got such a great community that I've kind of always drawn up my plans based upon what I've done from a previous year. So like this year, I looked at my plan for last year's West Highland Way and I said, okay, well, what do I need to change to get myself into a better state for that? But we've got such a great community around about that you can ask questions to people. Like,
Yeah.
other people that have done events, how did you do it? And nobody's going to gatekeep. People are going to tell you. Everybody's different in the way they approach their training, but I've not found anybody that's going to turn around and say, "Well, I'm not telling you what I've done." Everybody will share advice, and everybody will, I've had friends that have maybe messaged me to be like, your mileage is going through the roof. Do you know what you're doing? Are you sure you okay with that? And had some honest discussions about, yeah, okay, this might be a bit risky because there is the opportunity that I could injure myself here. But it's all done in that sort of controlled manner that if something doesn't feel right, then a training plan is just some numbers on a bit of paper on a wall. And at the end of the day, I'll listen to my body. If I need to dial that back, then I'll dial it back.
We'll get on soon enough to the proof of the pudding, so to speak, Stevie.
Yeah.
Now the question set's that long, I'm needing to scroll down it as we're getting through it. John has been doing a good job of holding the fort whilst I've been gallivanting, so to speak. So thanks, John, for putting the question set together.
I think we call it gallivanting.
Awesome. So, well, can we just flip to the West Highland Way? Is that all right? Because, I think that's been a really interesting chat and finding that wee bit more about your story as such. I think just I'll add a dimension to what we're waiting to speak about. So, John, can you flip the West Highland Way switch, please?
100%. And well, what we can do, and I'm sure Stevie will speak about this.
I'll
Last
actually
year-
flip it.
I'm going to do it.
All right, not like physically get up and do your dancing that you do.
Oh no, I did the dance. No,
All
I did
right,
the
okay.
dance. No. So
I tried, folks.
right, okay. So you can follow me up on this one though. Last year you did this thing, Stevie. There's a great debate about if it's what it is. It's called the Triple Crown. It's the Devil of the Highlands, it's the West Highland Way Race, and then it's the Highland Fling. So you've ticked the box. You've done the three of them in the 1 year. What took you back to Mulgai in June this year?
To be 100% honest, I almost didn't go back because I got to the end of last year, and like you say, it was like I knew the West Highland Way inside out. I ticked that box. I literally got the tattoo, and I thought that's it, job done. And it was on the Wild Hearts birthday run up in Balmaha in November. I went along to that. The ballot was opened, so you've got a buzz from folk who've already got their names in the ballot. And it was one of my crewmates, one of my support crew from last year, Donna Duncan. She was out running with some friends who also had their name in the ballot. And she said to me, "Why are you not putting your name back in? Don't ever take for granted that A, you'll get back in, and B, you'll be fit enough to do this race in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years' time." And I thought, you know what? It's right. She's right. I don't need a why to actually enter the race. And I thought, well, I'm just going to put my name in. So I deliberately waited until 2 minutes to midnight on the 30th of November when it closed, and I put my name into the ballot. And then 6 days later, I started actually getting messages first of all of other people telling me I was in before I got the email because they'd published the
Published it, didn't they?
they published it this time. So I was in the gym minding my own business thinking, 6 o'clock, the email must be out soon. And then I started getting loads of messages saying, "Oh, congratulations, you're in." So then I guess at that point I needed a why am I going back to do it? And I thought, well, if I'm going to go back and do this, then I need to improve on what I've done last year. And whether that was improving by a minute or 10 minutes or an hour, I wanted to come through a proper training block. I wanted to come through a training block and do myself justice and see what I could do. So that's how I ended up back at the start line.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And then, well, we're on the start line.
Yep.
There'll be many listeners who have been on that start line, but probably fair to say more listeners who have never been on that particular magical start line, and one host as well, by the way. Well, can you describe the feeling of standing on that start line in Mulgai for us?
I think this year I was a lot more relaxed. Like last year, I could feel the nerves running through me because I knew I had covered the entire route last year before race day, but you just don't know what that's going to feel like when you're running with everybody, and you there was just so many unknowns still there in front of me. Whereas this year, I knew what to expect, so I was kind of quite relaxed. It was the complete opposite of last year, and I just wanted to get going at that point.
And that change of sort of vibe, more relaxed, then your my. So you spoke already about it was about beating last year's time by a minute, 10 minutes,
Yeah,
whatever, a second.
yeah,
Yeah, but it sounds to me as there's been a mindset shift somewhere along the line as well in terms of how you're
yeah.
approaching it.
So I think last year was because it was my first time doing it.
Hmm.
I almost wanted to take people with me on that journey. So I had a big crew last year, and it was a day out. That sounds weird to say, but it was a day out
Oh,
where I had friends who were crewing for me that had done 50Ks, 50 milers, and I wanted them to experience. I wanted them to support run with me on certain sections, experience it,
yeah.
because ultimately one day they're going to want to take part in this as well. Whereas I think maybe about 2, 3 weeks after the race last year, I sat down and I looked at my times, and the warning signs were there because I'm looking at my splits between certain points and I'm thinking, well, I wasted 20 minutes at Balmaha when I got there. Now at the time I absolutely needed that 20 minutes, but a year later it's like I don't need 20 minutes at Balmaha. Rewerdennen, I didn't even stop at Rewerdennen. I just grabbed my drop bag this year and went through. Whereas last year I sat down and had a breakfast roll. So straight away it was
Hmm.
that different approach of I'm there to run. I'm not there to sit down and have a wee rest at checkpoints. I just want to get in, get what I need, and get back out and keep moving and see if I can make up a lot of time at the checkpoints. Then what else can I make up out on the course as well?
Brilliant. And that feeling that, to me, what it sounds like, Stevie, if you don't mind me saying, is to coin a term that we use often, you weren't as much up to high do.
I, yeah, no, absolutely. Um, I was very relaxed in what I was doing. I had a plan for if it was runnable, I was wanting to be sitting certainly in the first kind of 50K until it starts getting a bit spicy after Inverstead. I was wanting to kind of be running 10-minute miles. And then when it came to the likes of Conic, the Salike steps and things like that, it's like, let's just hike them. Let's just not mess about. Let's just power hike it up these. And as soon as I can start running again, let's get moving.
I was talking to a couple of people in the wee cafe at Flotterston on Saturday after the run, and we were talking about how we learn for things. And I said, if I'm going to do something the very first time, regardless of the experience, it's like a bit of a recce.
Hmm.
I tend to make an arse of things the first time. Sometimes I make an arse of it twice, but you learn from that, and
Yeah.
you go back and you've just what you've been describing, Stevie, is going back a different mindset. And you've already spoke. We'll speak more about this, about making adjustments from 2025 to this year and how you save and how you make up time, and you made up a hell of a time that we'll come to. I have to ask though, what was on that breakfast roll in 2025 at Raildenna?
It was a roll and square sausage with tatty
Sauce on it.
red sauce.
Good man, good man. Right.
Crispy.
But the flip side of that, for all that was amazing, I was eating it with a hat and a midgie net on because I was having to put it underneath and then eat it. And yeah,
Authentic.
I was getting
Yeah.
chewed to bits. So it was nice not to have that there.
So you might have missed. Stephen asked, was it a crispy roll?
Was it
Or was it a
crispy?
soft?
No, it was a weird roll. It was almost like some sort of brioche roll.
Oh,
It was from
Oh,
it's from St
St. Mocha.
Mocha's in
Yep, I have
Balmaha.
experienced that role.
we've
It
been
was
there.
It's
it
not a
was
bad
chunky.
role, but
It was chunky. It definitely filled me up. But yeah,
quite
it wasn't what I
girthy.
was
Quite
expecting.
girthy.
Yep,
Yep,
that's it.
yep. Anyway, so that's the detail that we're looking for.
More on food. More on food later. And you've spoke a bit about your race strategy. You mentioned crew.
Yes.
Let's give your crew this year a shout out. Who was your crew this year?
So this year I had Karen Ditch, who was driving for me. Now, Karen was driving last year as well. I've known Karen for, God, 5, 6 years now. Actually knew Karen through another friend, and I'm a season ticket holder at Glasgow Warriors at Scotstoun, and Karen works as game day staff there. And God, it must have been pre-COVID, easily pre-COVID. We were just having a catch up, having a chat, and she just, as an off the cuff thing, I think I must have done Run the Blades not that long ago when we were chatting, and she said, "Oh, if you ever need somebody to crew for you, you just let me know." And at that point, I was doing races that didn't need crew, but I was like, "Okay, yeah, no, that's fine, I'll do that." So then when I got drawn out last year, I messaged Karen and I was like, "Remember that conversation we had years ago where you volunteered to crew?" And straight away she was like, "I'm in, just tell me what you need." So Karen drove for me both years. And then this year I had Kevin Craig and Ryan Small, who were support running for me. Between them, they've got 6 goblets, so they know exactly what we're getting into. Ryan was actually, he was one of the ones that messaged me before I even knew I was in the race, and he was like, "Look, congratulations, you got in, I didn't get in. If you need help in any way, shape or form that weekend, just let me know, and I'm there for you." So it was nice. By the time I left the gym that night, I hadn't even told my wife that I was in the race yet. I already had my crew in place.
Brilliant. So you mentioned the gym as well, and right away in my head, I'm going, what are you doing at the gym? Is this like strength and conditioning?
Yeah, so strength and conditioning, but it's not, ironically, it's not really leg stuff. When I go to the gym, it's a break for my legs. It's more kind of core exercises and shoulder and chest exercises. And that was a very deliberate thing. Well, last year it was a lot of core work because I had kind of struggled on some of my ultras before the West Highland Way, where you're on your feet for 10, 11, 12 hours and you start feeling your hips getting tight and your lower back getting tight. So it was just to try and strengthen all that. And then this year there was an active choice I was going to use poles this year on the West Highland Way. Last year was the first year you could use poles in the race. And for some crazy reason, I had it in my head that nobody up until that point had completed the race using poles. So I was going to be true to that tradition. And I regretted that choice once I got like 75, 80 miles in. So this year I thought, no, I'm going to use poles. So I just wanted to kind of work on my shoulders, work on my arms, so I would get benefit from having my poles in the latter stages.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, it sounds like you're totally switched on to how you can have the best experience, the most profitable experience, not talking money wise, for you, about how you expend your energy, how you manage your energy. Lots of lessons have been learned, I think, from your time on the West Highland Way, not just the race itself, but the Fling and the Devil 2025. Lots of lessons brought forward. And going back to your crew, that sounds absolutely spot on who you've got in there in your corner, which is really important as well, going to that start line, knowing you've got that sussed.
Yeah, I mean, I deliberately went for a lean and agile crew this year. So and again, Karen had learned a lot of lessons from last year as well.
Yeah.
So we had systems set up where, as we were coming into a checkpoint when we were a mile out, one of the boys would jump onto the kind of crew WhatsApp group and just send a wee voice note to Karen saying, "Right, okay, we're a mile out. Stevie's going to need X, Y, and Z." And I had already made up kind of, even though we only got drop bags at, where would it been? Well, I only used drop bags at Rewerdenning and Beanglass, but I had made up drop bags for all the other checkpoints of things that I thought I would need. So when I came into Tyndrum, they had the drop bag there with, some gels in it, some Kendall mint cake, a t-shirt for me to change into. So it made that process a lot easier. And if anything changed, then the boys would just send a message ahead saying, "Right, okay, well, as well as bringing that drop bag, lift whatever I needed out the car," and we would have that there ready to go.
People will be listening in, crews will be listening in, who are doing the West Highland Way race in the future. These are the wee golden nuggets, Get somebody up the trail, suss it out, get a WhatsApp chat going, and then when you arrive there, the crew know what you want rather than saying, right, what are you needing? That's all done.
That's
Yeah.
all done. I mean,
Brilliant.
the biggest rule for me this year was checkpoints are not your friend. Don't go in, like I was telling myself, don't go into a checkpoint and sit there and get comfortable. Like, get in, get whatever you need, and get back out and get moving again. To the extent I didn't sit down at checkpoint. The first time I sat down was after the finish line, which was quite an experience trying to get back up. But that made a massive difference. Of just, I think last year I spent the best part of 50 minutes at Glencoe. Now, I absolutely needed some of that time to sort my feet and get some food into me. But the likes of this year, it was in, swap my bottles over. I think I changed my t-shirt at that point, and then Karen handed me some noodles, and we went running off down the access road eating noodles, knowing fine well that we could get to the King's house, stick them in the bin there, and keep on going. So it's just those little things where that suddenly saved me potentially 45 minutes on last year's race.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's process improvement, isn't it? To
Yeah.
coin a work term, but you know, you're getting rid of all the meat out of the process, so to speak, or noodles, whatever you want
That's
to
it.
say.
Just for clarity, because I'm sure it's not just me. When you say noodles, you're talking about a pot noodle, or are you talking about different kind of noodles?
No, like soba noodles. So yeah, just
Ah,
ones add water to it, mix it all up, and then the wee lid on it, you can pour the water out, and then you can just run eating your noodles. I say run, you're kind of shuffling down the
Aye,
access roads,
but moving forward,
but you're moving forward.
yeah,
That's it. It's relentless forward progress. You're constantly going, and I could use that time at the checkpoint to sit and eat, or I could move and eat at the same
yep.
time.
I think if I could just relate to what you're saying there, it was Alan Cormack who always, you know, Alan's been on the podcast before. I don't know if you've listened to him, absolute legend. He's like, what's the point of hanging about in a checkpoint when you could just even walk and eat, and you're every step's a step closer to the finish line. You know? So if you get 500 steps in and you're eating, you're scranning something, you're 500 steps closer to the finish. Plus, you've got food in the belly.
Yeah.
Fuel. So, no, awesome.
Can we talk? We've mentioned food a couple of times. How did you fuel your race this year, Stevie? What was your staple? What was your go-to?
So my plan kind of went out the window. So I use a carb mix. So last year I was using Tailwinds. This year I've swapped over to Highland Fuel Nutrition. Various reasons. First and foremost, they're a Scottish-based company. It's always nicer to support local. With all the tariffs that that idiot on the other side of the pond is putting on, Tailwind was becoming a lot more expensive. So yeah, I moved over there, moved over to Highland Fuel, and my plan was always to have a carb mix for an hour and then eat something for the next hour and then a carb mix for the next hour and just alternate between that, so my stomach's kind of always got something in it to process. So
Yep.
And then hopefully that doesn't give me any GI issues. But I always kind of struggle to eat during the hours of darkness. So I kind of struggled on the section over to Balmaha. And normally my go-to, if you ask anybody I go running with, I've always got a wee bag of Maird's gummy clusters in my trail pack. So I had 2 bags of them in a wee Ziploc bag, and that was going to be, straight away there's 180 grams worth of carbs, and I was just going to eat them over the first few hours. But I wasn't really taking that. I was drinking a lot more, and then my stomach was getting a little bit sloshing about. So yeah, I was alternating between that. I had some Kendall mint cake bars, the big bars to do. And again, they're great. You can just break them up into squares, throw them in your mouth. You don't even have to think about eating them. They just melt for you. Later on in the race, I had made up some wee mini wraps with Biscoff spread on it. There was one that Kaylee Webster put me onto years ago. And normally I'll absolutely destroy them. I just couldn't get them to go down. As that way I was putting them in my mouth and I'm just chewing and chewing and chewing and maybe swallowing a wee tiny bit. But fortunately, on my drop bags going up Loch I'd put some extra gels in there just in case, just to give me a backup plan, because you can train with something all the way through training, and then suddenly, if your stomach doesn't like it on race day, you're kind of up the creek at that point. So I did have a backup plan there. I had some SIS beta gels, and then at Bean Glass, I just grabbed there was some precision fuel pouches that folk had left in the scavenger table. And I know that they sit okay with me, so I just grabbed a couple of them, and that kind of seen me through to my crew at Tyndrum. And I think the exact instructions I gave my crew there was go and get me a portion of salt with some chips on the side. And they went off and got that. So I was getting a few kind of cramping issues going up through Bogle Glen, so I thought let's just get as much salt back into me as possible.
Good shout. Again, managing it, definitely, Stephen.
No, I was just going to say, wait, and did the salt manage the cramp, by the way? Did you manage to move through that?
I managed to keep on top of it.
Okay.
I do take salt tablets. So I had
Yep.
salt tablets, and I had some emergency ones, some Highland Fuel ones that are more sodium content than the ones that I normally have. So I had them there. And I actually recorded a video, I think it was about 50 miles. And I made a joke that I feel like I should be having a tequila just now with the amount of salt that I'm having, because it just felt like I wasn't overdoing it, but I was taking more than normally. I set a wee alarm on my watch to go off every half hour, and if it's on the half hour, I've got to take some salt tablets, and if it's on the hour, I need to think about what I'm eating for that hour.
Okay.
And I felt like I was taking more salt tablets than I should have been, but it was just trying to stay on top of it.
And the other question I was going to say, do you know, at post Kinloch leaving, say, do you know, when you're on that feeling of getting to the business end, have you got like a magical tactic or woofing something that gets you to the finish line?
When I got to Glencoe, I started using. I've still got some caffeine tailwind
Right.
mixes, so I was using that at that point. But that was a very deliberate. I'm not touching caffeine until I get to that point. And yeah, that did give me a wee boost. I don't drink tea or coffee normally, so if I introduce something like that on race day, I do get that wee boost from it. Yeah.
And I was checking out your splits earlier on, as you do, thorough research, John. And you know, you maintained your placing. You maintained your placing quite, you know, throughout. You know, I was like at the first split, you were like 50 something, and you finished 50 something. Do you know?
Yeah.
So you've managed to equalise that effort almost. Do you know, me, I'm like freaking dying on my arse and like losing places at the end. See, right? That's just how it works. John, doesn't it? You know, never learn. But you seem to have kind of just got your effort level, and then because of that, I'm thinking your energy, your nutrition, and stuff like that, spot on to maintain. Fair?
Yeah, but I think that comes back to what I learned last year, where we talked earlier on about the volume that I put into my training weeks, and I wanted to get to that point in Glencoe and know that I've still got something to give. And I didn't want to die. And partly that was down to foot care. That was down to keeping an eye on my feet and making sure they were okay. But yeah, it was also just knowing that I'm going to have something to give once I get there.
Perfect. And I know that John will want to dive into foot care because John's got a wee fetish for things like that. He definitely has.
I do, man. I
do.
do.
It does. Look, I can see him almost getting animated.
Yeah, well, let's do that. What shoes were you wearing on your feet, Stevie?
I actually had 2 pairs on. So I started off with the Asics Meta Fuji Trail. Now again, I'd done loads of training miles in them. I'd covered like 4 weeks beforehand. Kev, who was crewing for me, he was doing the West Highland Way Challenge coming south. So as my kind of last long training run, I met him at the top of Bogle Glen, and we ran the 47 miles south to Mulgai. So I'd done a lot of miles in them. I knew they were good for, I knew I wasn't going to get any issues, but something happens between Rowerden and then Inversnaid, and I don't know if I've slightly rolled my ankle. I suspect what it's a combination of slightly rolling my ankle, and it looks like I've had a cleg bite as well, just on the kind of the top of my ankle, and it caused my ankle to swell a little bit. And that was just see the almost like the cuff underneath your ankle. That was then banging into my ankle every time I was slightly off camber. So I basically had 25 miles to do like that, and then again just problem solving on my feet. Messaged the crew and said, look, the first place you guys can meet me is the top of Bogle Glen at the halfway point. Can somebody come to there and we'll swap shoes? and I had a pair of Asics Tobacco Max 4, and that's what I raced in last year. So just a little bit more support, a little bit more comfort, and that kind of resolved the issue. But I'd beat my ankle up for 25 miles, so there was, the shoe was giving me more support, but there was still definitely a bit of discomfort there.
Aye, by legacy.
Again, though, another good decision made.
Oh,
definitely. Now, socks. What socks do you wear?
I go for toe socks. This year was slightly different. Normally it's Injini, just a pair of Injini toe socks. But this year, because it was wet, I just had a no-name brand of like liner toe socks, and then I put some deck shells over the top of it. And then inside my toe socks, I had some of the Two Toms blister powder, just completely coated that in it,
Right.
and that seemed to do the trick.
It was certainly wet at the start, wasn't it?
Yeah. So having again, when I'd done that support run with Kev coming south, it was some of the worst weather I've ever ran in the West Highland Way, and it was just a monsoon for God, easily from 8 o'clock at night until about 2:30 in the morning, and I didn't have deck shells on, and I thought I've made a terrible mistake here. I got away with it somehow, but at that point it didn't matter what the weather was on or what the weather actually was when I was starting the race. I knew the trails were going to be wet for the race.
Yeah.
So I put deck shells on, and even silly things like, we got down the back of Dungoyne, and you've got that stretch that goes for what, maybe 2-3 miles along the back of the distillery to the beech tree. It's always wet. It doesn't matter when it last rained, there's always puddles there. And I was in a bit of a train by the time we got there, and people are running along, and then they're going up either side of the re-embankment to try and avoid it, and people were sliding everywhere, or people were having to stop and walk. I was just getting straight through the middle of it. Literally didn't keep, because I had the deck shells on, I was just straight through the middle, and it was probably one of the best decisions I made, putting those socks on for the race.
I couldn't believe the nick of some folks' legs. Melissa was on last week.
Yeah.
She used the word mocket. That was her dialect dictionary word. I couldn't believe the nick of some folk when they come through Tyndrum, like the gutters that were up the back of their legs. What the hell is going on?
You could see the ones that had taken a fall as well, and it would be that exact bit that had fallen
Yeah.
at, because you were trying to run on the embankment, and then it was just sliding away, and people were going down left, right, and centre on it.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, and you think you're only what, maybe 7? In fact, no, you're less than 7 miles in, because the beach tree's 7 miles. So
it's early doors.
You're maybe even less than 10k in, and that's you already soaked at that point.
Aye.
Go and say the name of the blister powder you used.
It is Two Toms blister powder.
Two Toms blister powder.
Two Toms. Again, it was a chat I had with Kayla Webster at B Craig's, and we were just talking about foot care, and she recommended trying it. And again, I got to try it on a couple of my longer runs during my training block, and it worked for me. So I just went for that. I didn't tape any toes or anything, just put the powder in, and it done the trick for me.
I think we're going to do a podcast episode on feet. I think definitely.
So many different approaches, so many different techniques to it, and everybody's got a different thing that works.
Yeah, and I think it's the same as nutrition. What works for one person might not work for the other one. But I like to be aware of the options. I've not heard the Two Toms before, so I've not heard of that. But my latest obsession is feet and feet care. What was your favourite section of the course this year, Stevie?
Oh, favourite section. I guess. Where would that be? Favourite section would be. I wrote an answer to this earlier, so I'm going to find it, because I
take your time. It's a long course, man. There's lots of sections in.
Favourite section was Larrick this year, and the reason
I wasn't expecting that. Man.
I know, but there's a couple of reasons for that. It's an absolute buggery of a climb out. You're looking at a 5k climb, and it's 1,000-foot elevation. From the base up to, we call it Kev's house. The wee abandoned house that's at the top of it. Kev Craig's always said if he ever won the lottery, he would like to buy that house, do it up, and just move there. So that's always known as Kev's house. But the reason that I liked it this year was it was light for me. So I could actually see I could see what I was running up. Last year, I left Kinlochleven at like 11:30 at night, so it was pitch black, and you just had no sense of how far up you were. Yeah, you could see lights in front of you and lights behind you. Whereas this year, I had an exact sense of where I was and what I had to do. And at that point, Kev had Kev had asked me if, did I have any more to give? And he asked me, it was actually coming down Devil's Staircase. He said, right, have you got any more? We need to keep pushing here. Can you give me something more on the hills going down? And I was like, no, my quads are short. I can't go any faster going down the hills, but I can go faster going up them. So for me, that was just that challenge of, let's just work all the way to the top here, because once we get to the top of Lavigmore, yeah, there's a couple little hills still to go. That's the big one out the way. That's the last big one out the way. And, at that point, you can really start thinking about the finish line.
Stephen can talk about that. Last year, Stephen supported John Robb.
Yep.
And going across, getting up that climb in daylight, it's a different thing, isn't it? A different vibe altogether, Stephen, yeah?
Totally, no. And John, who had support run last year for Ski Centre to the finish, I think it was, aye. Aye, so that time of day was similar time of day, Stevie. So I can almost, you painted a picture there that I totally got, and such. And then that wee masterstroke of Kev saying, "You got anything more to give?" Do you know who knows how many minutes that bought you? Just that wee,
well, that was
getting into your head.
It was coming down. It was coming down the descent into Kinlochleven. That was the bit that hurt the most.
That's Viserion, I know.
And it was, you're what, 5 miles and you're coming down 18,000 foot. So he was asking me there.
18,000.
Sorry, 1,800 foot. Sorry, it felt like 18,000 to me. But yeah, no, like I say, my quads were just absolutely shot. And he's asking me, what more can you get to give? Now, even though you're coming down 1,800 foot, there's still a lot of wee climbs before you get to the access road that goes down from the top of the dam. So when he asked me that, I was just like, I'm off. Like, I'm just going to power up here and try and make up as much time as I can. And we got into Kinlochleven and Kev was like, this is great. I've averaged times exactly what we need it to be per mile. So it doesn't matter whether you're making that time up going up a hill or coming down a hill, as long as our average time is what we need it to be per mile, then happy days.
And sorry, John.
I will let the cat out the bag and say that Stevie finished in 23 hours, 23 minutes. Right?
Right, mate.
Which is absolutely phenomenal. When did sub 24 come into your head?
I think throughout the day. So I'd went into it with a plan. We'd kind of made up plans for a sub 27, a sub 26, and if everything was perfect, a sub 25. So that was, I had rough timings of, I need to be at this checkpoint by X o'clock to be on target for that. As the day was going on, I knew I was ahead of time. I spent a good section running along Loch Lomond with a guy called John Burt, who trains with Scott Brown Fitness. And I'd never met John before, but we got on and we just kind of teamed each other along there. And John was getting in my head and he's telling me, if you get to Rowerdennan in 6 hours, then that gives you 3 hours to get to Beinglass. And then if you can get to Bridge Orchy in 13 hours, then that's leaving you 11 hours to cover 36 miles. And he's like, you would take those odds right now. So that was kind of in my head. John then kicked on through Lochside. He kicked on, and I didn't see him again until the following morning. But I got to Bridget Orchy in 13 and a half hours, round about that. So in my head, I'm like, okay, 10 and a half hours to go. But that's 10 and a half hours is still a long time, and I've still got 50k to do at that point. It was only really once we got into Kinlochleven. So I got into Kinlochleven in about 19 odd hours. And that left I think it was just under 6 hours to cover 15 miles. So at that point, I actually gathered the boys together and was like, right, let's be honest, what's the goal here? The goal's not 25, the goal's under 24. And again, we came down the staircase and I said to them, look, we're just going to work. I'm just going to work as hard as I can going up into Larigmore, and then we'll just power through Larigmore, and we'll see what happens at that point. But yeah, I think it was. I had a moment at Llandavra. I definitely had a moment at Llandavra because again I got there and it was light. Plus, there also wasn't a thunderstorm this year, which was amazing. But I got there, and at that point, with the amount, you've got 7 miles left to do, and you no matter how fried your brain is, you can start doing the sums on that, and you can start thinking, okay, well, we've potentially got 15-minute miles to do here, and we're still safe. So we've been running 12, 13-minute miles. As that goes on, that's a bit better. And then I think it was when I finally got to the top of the fire road. At that point, I realised that a sub 24 was in the bag. If I had to walk 4 miles, I had 90 minutes to walk 4 miles. And at that point, it's like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this.
That must have been some feel. We should say as well, in 2025, Stevie, you were 28 hours and 18 minutes.
Yeah.
So we're not kicking the arse in 5 hours you've taken off the time in a year. That is a significant scalp of time. So it sounds like it's been a very well executed plan. It sounds also like you've been fluid as you've went through. You've been pushing it, but your crew has been doing all the right things, pushing that comfort zone. But you've obviously put in that. So all that stuff about doing the high mileage weeks, that's all paying off at this point, isn't it?
Yeah. But I first and foremost, I'd asked my crew to push me. They were like, what will you react to? Will you react to mollycoddling and telling you it's okay, let's go, or do you want somebody to turn around and say, suck it up, Buttercup, it's time to go on with it? And I was definitely the latter one. It was like, let's just push me when I need push, then push me. But yeah, getting to that point where it was all coming together, and at that point I started getting a bit emotional going down the fire road.
Okay, what were you thinking about going down the fire road? Let's do it, man.
So my wife had been added into the group chat for that weekend, and she'd sent a couple of messages at Kinloch leaving, just saying that, I was doing so well. She was going to stay up until I finished because, it wasn't going to be a 5 o'clock in the morning finish. It was going to be a early hours of the morning finish. But I made an active decision. I wasn't touching my phone when I was running. Like, I was getting tired. I wasn't going to be looking at my screen. God, I even got to the point where I was recording video updates of I recorded video updates every 10 miles. And in the earlier stages, as I got to hills, I was like, I'll quickly upload that video whilst I'm walking up the hills. When I got to get Kinloch leaving, I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm just focused on running here. So when we got onto the fire road, I quickly pulled out my phone, checked, and seen a message from Debbie just telling me how proud she was of me and how, all the work I'd put in was about to pay off. And I lost it at that point. That was it. I was just bubbling down the road, and Kev and Ryan were just a little bit in front of me, and they heard me, and they were like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just keep going. We'll get there." But yeah, at that point, it just 6 months of work it was about to come to fruition, and it all came out.
Brilliant, man. How were your feet feeling coming on that fire off that part of the course?
I was a bit concerned about how they were going to feel because that fire road's got some big chunky stones on it. But it's obviously had a lot of feet over it since last year because it felt a lot smoother. My feet were sore, but I couldn't feel any blisters on my heels or anything like that. I'd booted a couple of rocks throughout the day, so my big toe was in a bit of pain, but it was 4 miles to go. I wasn't going to be thinking about that. I was just going to get my head down and get on with it.
Before we go to the finish, before we go onto the road into Fort William, what was your low point, if there was any, during the traverse of the West Highland Way?
Did I have a low point? Again, coming down, I would say coming down the double staircase for the first couple of miles, I was struggling because the boys were wanting me to run faster, and I couldn't do anything at that point. And the ironic thing is, it is my favourite part of the West Highland Way. See, when you maybe come a mile down from the top of the Devil's Staircase, and you get to it's pretty much a 90-degree left turn. You've got Kinloch leaving down in front of you. You've got the reservoir off to your right hand. I just love that view. But in my head, I'm like, I can't go any faster here. I just and I knew that the boys were running in front of me, and I could see them talking, and I'm like, they need me to go faster, and I can't do anything about this. But then, as we got further down and we start going up hills, I'm like, right, well, this is what I've trained for. I've done a lot of sessions on hills. I've got my poles with me. I can get some time back here. So it was a low point, but it didn't last for long.
That's no bad going. How was your heat? How was your heat throughout the whole race?
It was okay. When my ankle started playing up going along Loch Lomond, at that point you've still got easily 50 plus miles to go, and I'm like, this could all go wrong at a moment's notice. And when my quad was cramping up, I thought if my quad actually properly cramps, I'm done. But there's no point in stressing about that. You only, I kind of come from I take the approach, you only deal with the issues in front of you. Something I've not touched on. My daughter was born 12 weeks premature 6 years ago. She's absolutely fine now, but at the time it was absolutely terrifying. But even back then, it was a case of, well, you can't think about what ifs. You can't think about what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong. There's no point in worrying and expending energy on that. Just deal with what's in front of you. So my head was, for the majority of it, was okay.
Control the controllables, eh?
That's it. That is it.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going to come at your left field or from wherever that you've not been expecting. It's about that, and that's that problem solving thing. So if you control what you can, Stephen.
Well, take us to the finish line, Stevie. We spoke about standing on the start line and the feels, the vibe, the aura, all that kind of geek that the youngins say. What about that finish line and surpassing your expectations? Tell us how it felt.
It's still a bit of a blur, to be honest. I actually recorded a couple of videos coming into Fort William, and I'm so glad I did, because I just running with the crew and just thanking them for what they'd done, thanking them for pushing me and getting me there. And then as I came round into it, I recorded just a little video saying, I had a plan for sub 27, sub 26, sub 25, and then just to run through that door and say that it's none of them, it's going to be the way in a day. And the difference between finishing at 5 o'clock in the morning, where there was maybe a couple of volunteers and maybe the person that had finished before me there, the flip side of that was running in at just after midnight. The hall was, there was maybe 30, 40 folk in there. Everybody's cheering and clapping. And it was almost like the people who had finished before me were hanging about to see everybody else that was going to come in and under sub 24, which is exactly what I done. I finished, and then I wasn't going for a shower until we got to that 24-hour mark, because I wanted to see everybody else that was coming in. It was just completely surreal experience.
Aye, well, the accumulation.
Look at the smile. Look at the smile, man. Look at the smile. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well done again, because that is, aye.
Yeah, it's a dream. It's something it's words I never thought I'd be able to say. I ran north to south with Kev 4 weeks earlier. He managed to go sub 24. He went sub 23 going the other way, and in my head I was just like, how has he managed to do that?
It's easy that way.
The thing is, like, we came over Conic and we were running with Kevin and another boy, Alexander, who had also done the Bain before he started, and we start coming down through Gardaban Forest. Next thing I know, they're banging out sub 9 minute miles, and I'm like, where's this came from? And then once we got past Gartness, again they're banging out 9 minute miles, and I'm genuinely thinking I'm going to get dropped here, and I've only done 40 miles compared to the 85 something or the 86 something they've already done. So having done that a few weeks beforehand, I was like, how is it possible to go in the other direction, have all that elevation at the far ends? Because I think it's a lot more runnable going south at the end of the course than it is going the other way. So yeah, the way in the day was just, it was never on the cards for me.
And sorry, John, I just want to ask a really important question of Stevie. Have you planned the tattoo yet, or is it already been inked?
So last year I got a tattoo for the Triple Crown. So I got a marker pole with 3 crowns on it. And got my sheep on there.
We've seen
Yeah,
that,
but
all right.
I've messaged the girl that done the tattoo, and I said, right,
Okay.
okay, the way in the day, how do we incorporate that into what I've already got?
Ooh,
So I genuinely don't know what I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something for it, and I'm going to incorporate it into it. I've got to.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Stevie, people listening in to this, and thank you very much. You've described very much your story, your journey. But what you've done this year is quite remarkable. We often speak about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and this ticks all the boxes. What do you hope people listening in take away from your story?
I would say if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking about doing something, or they're thinking about stepping out that comfort zone, go and do the thing that scares you. Sign up for that event that you didn't think you were able to do, and sign up, but don't kid yourself on about your training. If you're going to sign up and you're going to scare yourself, then put the work in for it and get to that start line knowing that you deserve to stand there beside everybody else. We all get this imposter syndrome. I think this is genuinely the first year that I've got to a start line of a race and thought I should be here. I should. I'm not looking about thinking, oh God, these are real runners beside me, and I'm just pretending that I can be a runner. But that's because I've pushed myself out of my comfort zone, and I guess now the West Highland Way was a comfort zone for me, but it was just a case of pushing myself even harder on it.
That's brilliant. Well said. We all do have that imposter syndrome, but if you know you've done the graft and you've put the hours in, you've got the miles in your legs, then you deserve to be standing there at Mulgai.
100%.
Maybe shitting your cell a wee bit, but you deserve to be there at 1 o'clock in the morning ready to go.
Oh,
Because you don't know what's going to come in. Yeah.
Anything could happen. I probably had the perfect training block. I'm never going to have another 24-week block like that again. I never got an injury. I never missed a run. I jiggled things about because other family life got in the way.
Mhm.
But the miles that I set out to run in January, I ran them all by June. But yeah, it's just one of those things that as long as you can get to that start line and you know you've done the work, then you deserve to be there as much as anybody else.
You've mentioned wife and kids. You didn't rock up at Mulgai without the support of family. Say a bit about your family.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I couldn't have done anything that I've done over the last few years without the support of Debbie, my wife. Before I enter any event, we'll always sit down and they'll say, right, look, this is what I'm thinking of doing. This is what's going to be involved in it. But the number one rule is it's family first, training second. So if that means getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go for a 20-mile run, to then be back and ready to go to work at 9 o'clock, then that's what I do. I try to avoid. I prefer to run in the mornings, so I'm about for bedtimes at night for the kids. Occasionally, once I got to my peak block, there was all day runs where I was having to be out. I was having to take a day off work, but that would coincide with my wife's day off work. So she's stuck with the kids is the wrong word to use, but she's got the kids all day whilst I'm out running, and that's hard on her. And likewise, there was a bunch of night runs I've done as well, where I would maybe work all day, then go and run during the night, and then come back and have to grab a couple of hours sleep before then going back into normal family life. And again, that's just a big ask for Debbie to have the kids all day whilst I'm doing that. So yeah, we always sit down and have that chat. But yeah, without her support, and I think that's why I got so emotional when I was running down the fire road, because training is just something I go off and do, and we don't really talk about it. Not that she belittles anything I do, but just to get those messages of how proud she was of me, it just suddenly just last 6 months just
Yeah,
grew.
but they've all got that investment. It's not just you that's invested in this. They've all invested in it, as of your crew. So there's a whole lot of people invested. And then there's all the dot watchers, the
Yeah.
people
Oh,
that are,
the amount of messages I got was ridiculous. Like, in a good way, ridiculous. But
yeah, yeah.
like, I think at one point I was showing my crew on this Sunday before the presentation, and I was literally just sitting scrolling for 2 minutes to get through all the unread messages. I deliberately kind of muted that when I was running. But I made a point, if somebody sent me a message over the weekend, it took me days to do it, but I made a point of going back to every single person and saying thank you and replying to them personally.
But it brings it home as well, that running community we've got. And there's a very supportive running community we've got. I can only speak about Scotland. I'm sure it's elsewhere too, but it's absolutely amazing that how much people want and also how they celebrate your success as well. So
Yeah.
it's brilliant. And I'm going to reiterate again, send a message. If you think about something, send a message.
Yeah.
Have you or your family ever questioned your sanity?
Yeah, on a regular basis. I get reminded by my brother that there is the 82 that goes all the way up to Fort William. Only takes a few hours to drive up there. If I want the more scenic option, there's a train from Queen Street that goes up there and goes right along the side of it. So yeah, I've got a mate who regularly drives up the 82 for as part of his job, and he will just randomly pop like a random Tuesday morning. He'll pop a photo in from somewhere on the West Highland Way and just be like, "Okay, Stevie, name where I am." And as soon as I see it, I'm like, "Okay, well that's exactly where you are." And they just laugh at it. They just laugh.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, that one piece of kit, Stevie boy. Let's do that.
I would say it's my.
You speaking to me?
I was talking to young Heart from Free Stevie boy.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, Stevie, then you can ask a question then.
No, you go for it. You go for it, Stevie boy.
I would say it is, I've got it right here, it is my decathlon vest. I think over the years when I first started getting into trail running, I tried like a Salomon vest, and I felt like a piece of lamb all trussed up for a Sunday roast. You know, that kind of wee like what's it called? Just the wee kind of like elastic straps that they've got going over it. You know, when I was a bigger lad, I'd put one of them on and I was popping out all over the place. Decathlon back then they were still relatively cheap for their kit, and they had these kind of proper, I've got it here, the proper straps and the proper clips.
Fasteners.
They both were fasteners, so you could fasten it over, you could adjust it. It just worked for me. And now, like, if I go for a run without my trail pack on, I just feel lost. And even if it's just a wee silly run on the trails here, you know, I've always got my first aid kit in there. I've always got some emergency. Not that I would ever need emergency wears, but you never know when you're going to come across somebody else that might need something like that. So I would say it was my trail vest, my kind of go-to piece of kit.
Good shout. Decathlon as well.
Yeah.
No, because I've had issues with the Montane Gecko one. The straps keep slackening off. You've got to keep pulling them tight. And
So
I'm
those ones have
thinking
got
about one
proper wee clips that you can kind of cinch right in. So it's good.
Aye, much more tactile.
And then the other thing is you can go to your local shop and actually physically try it on. Whereas if you're ordering something, one of these vests from online, it's what size is it? How does it feel?
It's a good shout, man. It's a very, very good shout. If Stevie McKenna, the snowboarder, could speak to you about the future Stevie McKenna, or sorry, the other way, if you could go back and speak to the snowboarder, what would you say to him?
I would say start sooner. Get your life sorted out sooner. You know, it was it was an unhealthy lifestyle I had. You know, I played rugby when I was younger, and then gave that up. Started snowboarding, but I was kidding myself on. I was going to the gym twice a week, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to the gym. I can eat what I want." You know, I was living my 20s and my 30s like I was 18. I was partying at the weekends. I was taking photos at music festivals during the summer, drinking and everything else that comes along with it. It just wasn't a healthy lifestyle. And I think at one point I was up at 18 stone. And I wish I could go back, even 25 years and say, get a grip and just sort yourself out and make those little changes and start running. Because, yeah, by doing this, I've hopefully added, years to my life.
Hmm?
If I'd done that earlier, then who knows? Who knows?
I wish you spoke to me 40 years ago. Anyway, I know it's your leg. How are your legs now after the West Highland Way?
They're okay. My legs are okay. My ankle's still got a little niggle in it, so I've had a couple of runs. Had a couple of runs since then. It's not happy on. So on Saturday, it was okay on the climbs and the descents and the pentlands, but then when we got to the far end of the kips and we came back down through the middle of them, there was a section that was off camber, and my ankle just really didn't like that. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to run for maybe. I'm definitely not running this week, potentially through some of next week, and I'm just going to do some gym sessions, get on the walk bike, and just see if I can keep my fitness going that way. But I'm just going to give it a proper kind of like 12 days to sort itself out. But my actual legs itself are fine. It's just my ankle.
Okay.
No bad. No bad. Report.
Hmm.
All things considered.
Does Debbie ken about your next event?
She does. She does. Well, I've got two things coming up. So potentially, I'm saying potentially because of my ankle niggle, I've got a bib for Run the Blades in 2 weeks' time for the 50k.
Of course you have.
And
Of course you
I've
have.
got,
You're
but I've
local.
also got 6 friends who are doing their first 50k. So if I can, I want to get along to it and be part of that. So even if I'm going along and just running, if I'm, if I feel my ankle's okay, I want to go along and just run with them. And maybe that's a case of floating about, running with some of them, and then dropping back and finding somebody else and doing that. I don't think it'd be going along and actually racing it myself. But I need to be sensible about things, because if that's still playing up a little bit, I don't want to aggravate it and then potentially have another 3 or 4 weeks of not doing a lot, because I've got the GB Ultras Cheshire Ring booked for the end of September. And Debbie does know about that because it's a September weekend from the schools, so we're going to make a weekend of it, go down to Manchester. I'll disappear on the Saturday, go and run that race, and then we're going to spend the Sunday and the Monday doing something.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Nice
That's
and
it.
planned. Yeah, and you can always go to Run the Blades and see your pals there.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
So I'm going to be there on the Friday night. I'm taking photos for the event on the Friday night. I'm taking photos on the Sunday morning. And if I'm not actually running, if I feel that's a bad idea, I'll go up and I'll volunteer, or I'll just go up
Yeah.
and go out on the
Aye.
course and see people. I'll be there one way or another.
Standing with your goblet at the end like that. 2 goblets.
You tattoo. Check me. And quite rightly so, by the way.
Right, Stevie
Oof.
boy, you're back.
Yes.
Let's open the double D.
The dialect dictionary, Stevie. Hopefully you've had a chance to ponder and you're
So
away to throw
I
something in.
I had one lined up for years, back when I thought I've got no chance of ever getting on the podcast, and then I submitted it for the unawards, and you actually took it and you turned it into a sticker, which was
Brilliant.
shite bag if you didn't. And again, coming back to what the buy-in from Debbie for any events, whenever I'm going to do, like when I said to her last year about the West Highland Way, she was like, well, shite bag if you didn't, just go and do it and see what would happen. But we've already got that. So the one I want to use, the one I want to put in is greeting or greeting, because that's what I done the entire way down the fire road into Fort William. I was bawling my eyes out, greeting with pride about what I was about to do. So if that's not in there, can we stick that one in?
It's no. And it is. You were greeting, you're bawling your eyes out. But you also can use it as in, he's a greeting face bastard.
Exactly. Exactly.
We've missed you, Stevie boy. And we should also say a thank you, because that shite bag if you didn't. I wonder how many folk have entered races and took things on since December last year. That's in shite bag if you didn't went live with us. Honestly, it's absolutely. It's one of people's favourite stickers or magnets, whatever. They love it. It's brilliant. Yeah.
I know. There's a few shite bags if you didn't plastered about Manhattan now and all. So.
Okay, brilliant. Greeting is right in there.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I don't know if you are a listener to music, to podcasts, or if it's nature that you go with, whether it's training or running events, Stevie. But as you'll know, we have a playlist for the Young Hearts Run For You listeners. What would Stevie McKenna, double West Highland Way Race finisher, like to add in?
So I've got one that I've checked. It's not on the Buff playlist. And I'd like to add Public Enemy, Harder Than You Think. And the reason I want to do that is it's a kind of go-to song for me that just gets me going. But there's two lines at the end of the second verse, and they say, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. Harder than you think is a beautiful thing. And for me, that's all about signing up to an event, committing to that training plan and standing for it, pushing yourself outside that comfort zone, and then having that moment when you get to the finish line and you realise that all those training hours are worth it and you can actually do hard shit. So that's why it resonates with me.
We didn't have a lot of hip hop on the Buff playlist, man. That's brilliant, and it's an awesome tune. And thank you for the reason it means so much to you. Brilliant. I look forward to. I know the song well, but I look forward to listening to it again. Stevie, this has been. We knew it'd be brilliant, man. Anybody that. And I'll say this publicly to everybody that toes that start line at Mulgai, even if you didn't get to the finish, everybody that toes the start line is a hero in my book. To have the guts to stand there and take it on is brilliant. To finish it in 28 hours like you did last year is brilliant. Anybody that gets to the finish. I was 31 hours something when I'd done it, and I'm still as proud today as I was then. But to go back the year after and take 5 hours off your time is quite phenomenal. So I hope you're mega proud of yourself. And also the mindset you've developed and the learning that you've done, not just learning you've done, but how you've put it into practice and taking that just about 5 hours off your time. And you've said, you used the phrase a couple of times, the weigh in a day, sub 24, man. That is phenomenal. And nobody can ever take that away from you. So congratulations. It's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to hand over to American Boy to say a final cheerio. Stephen.
No, I think John's covered pretty much everything there, Stevie. I think what has really come over is how much of a student of the ultra running game you are and how much you're taking in and putting into practice and saying that's going to be a tactic that works for me. That's not going to be a tactic that works for me, and finding your sweet spot. And it certainly was like one of those sort of perfect storm days by the sound of your account of your West Highland Way this year. So another massive well done for myself, and just backing up what John says. Keep on going, doing what you're doing. Keep on using that Insta 360 camera.
I will do.
Superb, man.
Thank you.